Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of SPAG Dialogue, a series of online events brought to you by PR and advocacy experts, SPAG, in association with Reputation Today. A warm welcome to all our panelists and the 60 participants who registered for this, and also the 120 PR Club members who have been invited today. This session is also being live streamed on YouTube on our channel bit.ly Reputation Today on YT. So if you are facing any issues on Zoom, you may switch to YouTube, but without the option of asking any questions, of course. For those who are attending using Zoom, please feel free to ask your questions using the Q&A box. Please avoid using the chat box for this. Before we introduce our panelists, let me remind you the hashtag for today is #PolicyDialogue. Please tweet your learnings, thoughts, and ideas about this series using the hashtag #PolicyDialogue. And don't forget to tag SPAG Asia and Rep Today Mag. I would now like to welcome our panelists for today. Giri Govindarajulu, Director for Information Security APAC at Cisco. Jaspreet Bindra, author and founder of Digital Matters. Kuppulakshmi Krishnamoorthy, Product Evangelist at Zoho Corporation. And Neelima Dwivedi, Group Head and Director for Government Affairs and Public Policy at Microsoft India. And moderating the panel discussion today is Aman Gupta, co-founder and managing partner, SPAG. Before I hand over the mic to Aman to steer this conversation ahead, I would like to make a special mention. All co-panelists in the discussion today will be sent a copy of Jaspreet Bindra's latest book, The Tech Whisperer, on digital transformation and technologies that enable it. Without any further ado, over to you, Aman.
Thank you, Anubhuti, and I welcome all my fellow panelists and all the attendees who have joined us. The topic today, I think, is something which almost each of us could very much relate to. It's such a relevant topic in today's world. I think about 6 to 7 months back, nobody would have imagined, if we would have been thinking of doing a panel like this, we would have been looking at where we will host it. Whether we can get the people from different parts of the city's world to come together on a single place. We'll be looking at how many attendees can we fit in a particular room. All of that changed in the later part of the year. Where we stand today, I think all of us, the life which we live, the way we work, the way we learn, the way we engage, everything has changed. And one of the key elements which has played a very, very critical role in making it still possible has been technology. I think the technology has ensured that we are able to enable our life in the manner which is pretty much okay with the kind of changes which it has brought in. I think what we are trying to therefore achieve today with our panel of experts is to really understand what does the future hold for us. What does the technology would enable for from work from home, from any other aspect of our life? And if that's what the future holds, what's the kind of concerns may exist? And how do we ensure that there is a balance between using technology for its best, as well as ensuring that the certain concerns which may exist? And do we have the right policy ecosystem? Or do we need to work towards a policy ecosystem which will be able to make it happen? Now, therefore, let me start by sort of asking Neelima the first question. Neelima, you represent Microsoft, one of the global big tech companies. It has the technology. It is the one which has always sort of been up there to sort of bring in that kind of a technological innovation. And I think in today's world, it is one of the leading players which has made it happen. So from that particular, sort of a vision, how do you see the technology really moving forward, allowing us to work in a better fashion, in a more efficient manner, keeping in mind what the future may hold? So if you could sort of provide a perspective what the future holds and what the technology is going to do, especially from an access perspective, I think that's would be a good start to this conversation.
Thank you, Aman. And first of all, let me, wish all my colleagues and industry colleagues here, and good afternoon to everyone. And thank you, SPAG and Reputation Today, for this opportunity to be in this panel discussion on an important topic. I think that's a great question, Aman, which you have asked, and especially in today's world when the COVID-19 pandemic has been let me tell you, it has been really a watershed moment for the digital transformation businesses. And if you look at the statement made by Satya Nadella that the world has gone through 2 years worth of digital transformation in just 2 months. And at Microsoft, in fact, we spent last few months learning about our customers and studying how we all are adapting to these challenges of today. And what we have observed that there are three distinct phases which we are going through. The first one is respond, second recover, and third reimagine. So if you look at the response, so all the companies are really responding pretty well and to this COVID impact. And most of the organizations have been reliant on technology, and immediately in short term, in fact, they went ahead in adapting those technologies to maintain continuity and remain open. The second phase where I think most of us are there is that, again, getting back on track and functioning in this new normal. So that's the second phase, which is sort of, you can say, recovery. And the third phase, which we would be in, or we are slowly stepping into, is reimagining. So of course, as we all say that with great changes comes great opportunity. So that is also applying here, that now this is the time to adapt and reimagine, and adapt and reimagine our business strategy accordingly, right? Because now technology, we all know, is really going to play a very, very important role. It has really become a sort of backbone to all of us. Now, coming back on coronavirus, right? And what kind of, and how Microsoft is enabling in this pandemic situation, especially maintaining and how enabling employers while working remotely or working from home. So again, we all know that coronavirus pandemic is in the full swing, and we are not seeing, like, no, it's showing any sign of slowing down. And if you look at day by day, we started with social distancing, but now we realize the importance of social distancing, right? That how critical it is. And especially in last 6 months, if you see, businesses across the world have started working from home. And again, I'm going back to my respond. So again, they all have hastily pivoted towards remote working model. So that's the digital transformation which we all are talking about. Now coming back to Microsoft technologies. So there are several technologies of Microsoft which are helping, enabling, empowering our consumers, our users, our customers, right, in this situation, in this difficult situation of pandemic, especially while working from home. So I'll just give you example of Microsoft Teams, which is our communication and collaboration tool. And it is helping in creating this workspace and bringing people together to collaborate, to communicate, and share content. So in parallel, as a team, you can work together wherever you are. We all can work together. We can edit, have access to those files. So there are several features. In addition to that, whether we are 10 employees or 10,000 employees, they all can meet together in one place, no matter where they are located. So that's another great features. And third, you talked about security. So Teams also has a very, very advanced security features for data security, especially. And also the safety part, that against any unauthorized access. So these are the key features of Teams. We talked about that working from home. It's not only for the businesses. If you look at also the school and colleges, universities across the country, they all have embraced Microsoft Teams to ensure that teachers and students stay connected and there is no disruption in studies. And it is such a fulfilling experience to see when we interact with our consumers, users, schools. I think then we understand the power of technology. But with all these things, Skype is another example. But with all these things, we do realize that working from home also poses a lot of security risk, lots of security threats. There are bad actors, we all know, and how vulnerable we are at this point of time, right? So again, for that, Microsoft is uniquely positioned We are cloud provider, as like Microsoft is known for its Azure cloud. And also we are a security provider. So we leverage our global cloud scale, trillions of signals, and deep expertise to build industry-leading security solutions to provide cloud resources. Microsoft has its cloud security solutions, which provide comprehensive cross cloud protection. So you are in any public cloud, if you have those security solutions, it can be taken care of. Then we have our security center, which continuously monitors your cross cloud resources, such as virtual machines, network, application, data services, everything, right? So there are so many features which Microsoft has in security and security technology. People talk about Microsoft threat protection, ATP, what they call about. Again, this Microsoft 365 has, again, embedded risk management, in fact, systems into that. So there are several such technologies which is really helping empowering our consumers, our customers in this difficult time while working from home and remotely. And I just wanted to briefly touch upon that, that how Microsoft technologies are enabling our people while working remotely or working from home.
Thanks, Neelima. And I think, you did talk about the fact that it's not just work from home, the technology is helping the world move at the, maybe not at the same pace, but it's continued to move even despite the fact that there has been a kind of a complete lockdown and there's a pandemic affecting all, across the world. And I think the aspect that how technology has helped kind of democratize the whole, workplace, learning space and everything is I think is kind of a good example of how the humankind could really adapt to the different situation as it may come in. I want to sort of come to Jaspreet, to you, because I did have a look at a couple of the articles which you talked about, and I think you have a kind of a different take. It's from work from home versus something else. So I want to sort of understand from you as a kind of a person who is sort of leading the technology conversation. How do you see the future emerging? What do you think would be the role of the technology in the future? Neelima did touch upon the fact that there are certain concerns which might exist, but if you just look at technology as a key enabler, what do you think the future looks like of the way it would be embedded in our life?
Thank you very much, Aman. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you again. I apologize to the audience as well as my co-panelists for not switching my video on. I'm not very well. And I was saying someone else, I do not want you to subject you to that view right now. Thank you also for, having my book sent to my co-panelists, and a bigger thanks to them if they managed to plow through it. So thanks for that. Three or four things to answer your question, Aman. So first of all, I think what this pandemic, and more important than the pandemic, actually the lockdown, we tend to think of them as the same things. They are not. The pandemic was predictable in many ways. Something like this was going to happen. The lockdowns were unpredictable. Okay, that this is what it will do to us. And so what it has done is what I sometimes call the COVID paradox, in a sense, that it has slowed down the world, but it has greatly accelerated change at the same time. So it's a bit paradoxical. And the second thing, therefore, the biggest change or the most visible change that it has accelerated is what we are seeing and calling as work from home. Because all of us are in the middle of it. People like us are in the middle of it, and we kind of see that as the biggest change out there. To me, however, this is a manifestation or an example of a much bigger trend, which had actually been happening even before the pandemic came. And as I said, the pandemic has just accelerated it. And the bigger trend in many ways across different industries, across sectors, was this whole trend of decentralization. The world had become very centralized, whether in institutions or money or even work for that matter. And now suddenly you kind of see this decentralization. And actually work from home is is decentralized work. I also do not believe that it's really work from home. As we go forward, I think this will carry on as we all predict, even after the lockdowns are over, etc. But actually, it's not as much work from home as it is work from anywhere, or WFA, where WFH, WFO, which is office, or work from mall, or work from coffee shop, will all be a subset of work from anywhere. And I think that work from anywhere had frankly been happening, if you think about it, much slower. And it was kind of a 15-year, 20-year journey towards a true work from anywhere, except that this lockdown, not as much the pandemic, but the lockdown, has actually accelerated it to make it happen in days, literally, rather than years. And this decentralization, by the way, is not only in work. Work is the most visible manifestation. Decentralization has happened in education, as we are seeing, okay, or is happening. Healthcare, even in fact retail, even in fact eating out or restaurants, it's kind of getting through deliveries, getting decentralized. And so I think there's this whole massive, the great decentralization in a sense, which has been accelerated by COVID. Number three, therefore, is that because of this huge sudden decentralization, very frankly, human behavior, sometimes technologies, and even our laid down norms and policies obviously haven't caught up. And so what has happened is that very quickly, the fastest of the block to kind of bridge this gap or to kind of enable this decentralization to happen has been technology. And all the good stuff that Neelima spoke about, or what Cisco has been working on, or Zoho has been working on, or Zoom, or everything else, has kind of just stepped into a role which it wasn't supposed to do this fast at this scale, okay, and kind of bridged it. But I believe that this is just a bridge. Actually, I think this work from home or anywhere or decentralized work is actually a huge opportunity, and there's going to be an almost Cambrian explosion of innovation in this, and how to make technology bridge this divide of not only just staring at each other's screen, but also, how does it enable collaboration? How does it enable the physical chemistry, which, these platforms yet cannot enable? And obviously, the whole security issues, the privacy issues, which Neelima also touched upon. So while this is greatly exciting, the final point, Aman, is that there's also this massive other side which we sitting where we sit do not see. And it is that the other huge problem actually that has been accelerated is the digital divide. And the digital divide between people who have access to people who do not have access is now almost existential. If you do not have access, your children are not going to get educated. If you do not have access, you'll not be able to reach your doctor. You can't go to a hospital or a health center. And that is alarming in many ways. And I hope, I hope that actually technology helps bridge that gap of digital divide as much as it will bridge our own gap at our levels in terms of making work from anywhere happening almost the same way as the way we used to. And I think going forward, it's not going to be only physical work or only digital work, but a hybrid between the two, where humans and technology will work together from a work, healthcare, education, etc. viewpoint. So I will stop here, Aman, and hand back over to you.
Thanks, Jaspreet. And I think I personally do agree that work from anywhere or technology kind of encompassing around us. It's something which will be there for each and every aspect, and the aspect which you discussed about the technological divide from people who have an access to versus not have, and that journey to happen, that to happen, I think is where it will be. And also I think it will be up to all of us to see within our lifetime that how this explosion in the technology innovation will help us, reach something which I think could be sometimes just a part of a science fiction movies or books which we may have read. With that, I want to come to you, Kuppulakshmi, because, as a part of the conversation which you and I were having, we discussed the fact that there is a data privacy issues, you have a security issues. And as someone who has been at the at a product development side of it, how do you really see the companies or the companies which are in this particular space really, coming up to ensure that that is taken care of? Because we know this is something which will be part of our life, but you also have this adaptation will be based on how people are trusting the technology they are using. So what's the kind of thing which is happening, and how the companies are basically looking into this whole data privacy and the technology and the security part of it?
Okay. Are you able to hear me very clearly? Because somewhere I lost Aman. Good? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good. Okay, thank you. That is a very great, deep question. And suddenly, I'm feeling all warm and responsible to answer this in all dimensions. And I've been listening to Neelima and Jaspreet, and both of them made some wonderful points. Today, I'm happy to be representing Zoho and as part of this policy series, which is very important at this time, because when we talk about pandemic, when we talk about, like Jaspreet said, I was writing some notes. So if I'm looking away from the screen, because I just want to see if I'm covering all these points, it's a very good point that he made, that work from anywhere is what it is, right? We have accelerated the future. You work from a coffee shop, or you work from anywhere in the world. So eventually it's going to move out from work from home. So now when I'm looking at all of these points, these beautiful dots, when you connect them together, and then the question that you bring, today, the definition of who is consuming technology, user, customer, the definition is expanded. It's no more only an organization that is, evaluating a software vendor or technology on a broader terms, right? Everyone has been, the end user perspective is broadened. So now why I am here today is, I work with several products with Zoho, and with the outside world, I work a lot closely with the startups. And I've been with Zoho for over a decade now, and I've seen how we have grown as a company, not just talking about culture, right? When we talk about pandemic, when we talk about distributed teams, when we talk about how cool it is to hire people from anywhere in the world, I think today, as part of these policy series, it becomes very important to highlight the whole concept of ethics. As much as we talk about cool culture and running remote, can we also shift focus and bring a balance talking about ethics, where the famous quote that goes, right, when everyone has the right to do things whichever they want to do, they have the rights to do you have enough ethics, ethical values and principles, where you will do only the right things? This is very, very important to talk about, knowing the difference between what you have the right to do and what is the right thing to do when it comes to data privacy and security. So in that way, I'm very happy to represent Zoho, because long before it became either politically correct, or it's in the PR, in the news, or even it was fashionable, we began doing the right things in order to be worthy of an organization that is providing software end-to-end for anybody who's running any kind of business. So today, Zoho runs on Zoho. Okay, we use many of our apps ourselves, right from hiring people from different parts of the world to how we collect and process the information of our end user. So when this pandemic knocked at our doors, 8,000 of us employees sitting across different parts of the world, we went remote over 3 days of time. We put in business continuity practices in place. We went and revisited our security and privacy policies. We imagined what it means to be working from home, the definition of workplace that changed overnight for different people. We are talking about people from different culture, different mindsets and values, different geographical and the demographic dividend that we talk about. So this is like an intersection of all of this that you have to put it on the table. Look at each of these points very carefully and talk about primarily 3 or 4 things when it comes to data security and privacy, right? When the culture is, shifting its focus to ethics also. So at Zoho, we take our security and privacy very, very seriously. If you see it in the news and if you visit any of Zoho's privacy security policy, one, we keep it very, very simple because like you mentioned, Aman, because we're talking about policy writers of education, we talk about different organizations that is now looking at running remote, it becomes very important to simplify the language. It should not be confined to the CTOs of the company or people in the IT team only who can understand this language, right? You have to write these terms and conditions in a language that everyone can understand. Now, when you write it, where do you put it? Is it accessible by people from anywhere at any time? So how you say what you say, where do you put this information for everyone for it to be available? Now, when you're doing all of these things, what are you doing as an organization, right? Two parts to this. One, what conversations do you have with your employees, internal conversation? What are the kind of conversation you have with the outside world that is looking at you as a trustworthy Indian company who's been around for 24 years? Now, Zoho's policy is we never sell information to anyone, to any of the user information that we are collecting for ads purposes or to make money on the side by showing somebody else's ads to you. We run an ad-free policy and we don't make money out of our users' information. Now, with this as a primary foundation or a platform, it becomes very easy for us, instead of standing on the rooftop and shouting and not following some of these principles and guidelines ourselves. So we've made it very transparent. We've made it very simple. Now, to address your question and some of the points Jaspreet also made, we have to make software very affordable so that everybody in the world can use it, especially when it comes to education. So along with security and privacy, we have run several programs in this time that pandemic has hit us, equalizing all of us at the same time, throwing us, questioning our own humanity, especially when you're running a business, right? You have to make ROI at the end of the day. So Zoho has come up with several nice schemes where we can work with government schools. We can work with tier 2, tier 3 cities, schools, or educational platforms where we have made some of our apps being available for free. We do training for free where Zoho classes, Zoho meetings, some of our apps that have been in use by us is made available by these schools and organizations, NGOs and non-profit people to use it for free, and we've simplified it to a level where adoption happens very seriously. So by putting your anti-spam policy, security and privacy policy visible, the mindset of us, Indians even now, unfortunately speaking, where we are very quick to go and say, I agree, and then you install a software. So when you do that, it is very important to go tell people, there is no hurry, take your time, there is a trial period. Go evaluate, come back and ask questions. Meanwhile, we also train our employees because for my team, for example, we deal with a lot of data. So when we are using VPN and we are accessing data from our own data centers, it is important to hire the right people, right? Now, sitting it remotely, how do you understand the mindset? How do you understand if they understand Zoho's legacy in all these 24 years? How do you establish trust and hire the right kind of people when you're dealing with sensitive data? How do you use your own apps where you build trust, where you put the human element in the front? Security, privacy is another part of the coin, right? So how do you use some of these apps where even today, the CEO of the company, Dwivedi, he has a lot of conversations with all of us employees, people like, tenured like me, or even a fresh grad who's just joined Zoho. So the importance of how we handle our own information and how we handle our users' information is talked about every day, so to speak. So we have dedicated security and privacy teams. We have internal audit and compliance. We have ongoing trainings that are happening even now, so that all of it is in place and it is tuned to the side effects of the pandemic also. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you have, Kuppulakshmi. And I think it interesting question, which I want to come to Giri. So for people who are in the technical side of it, they may understand. But as you rightly said, most of the people will look at and, just click the button, I agree, and move forward. And also, I think, Giri and I was having chat yesterday, and we said, like, companies also are at a different stage of evolution. There will be ones which are like large, big ones who understand technology. They will have the relevant skill sets in the system to say, okay, I know which technology should I adapt. Do I have the right data security? Some may not be having that kind of a thing. So there is even a kind of a divide within the actual corporate sector per se. So I think with keeping that in mind, how does the acceleration in the system happens like that? How can the sector per se empowers the decision makers or educate and sensitize them, and how work with them? Because this is a subject which is relevant, and it will only become more relevant in the coming times. Because if something goes wrong, it's not going to be an organization which is a supplier. It will be the sector per se which might bear the brunt saying something went wrong, right? So Giri, do you want to sort of, as somebody who's been at the core of this whole thought process, provide a perspective? How does this whole thing happen? How does your team and you guys sort of really look at this particular space?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Aman, and good afternoon, everyone. So I do agree with a lot of things that my co-panelists shared, and the reality is, COVID has been like a flood, right? It has just come and hit us hard, and as the response from folks, right? If you take from different sectors, the folks are at different levels. If I have to give an analogy of the flood and the swimmers and swimming kind of a thing, there were some folks who knew, or they were trained in swimming. They know what it takes to swim and stuff like that, so that they can get to the right place. A lot of enterprises are in that space where they have taken the digitization journey before. So they know what it takes for them to work from home. They, in fact, I would even extend what Jaspreet said. It's not only just work from anywhere. It is from any time and any device as well, right? Because the line is thinning between what I use at home or for personal reasons versus what I'm using for work, right? The same phone is used by the kid to attend a class or to play a game. So there's a lot of challenges going on in that space, right? So the challenges for the advanced folks are different, right? Their bigger problem is they had a business continuity plan which says, hey, if something were to go wrong in my office, what do I do, right? I have a, alternate mechanism to do it. But with this COVID coming and hitting us, we actually have to make this business continuity plan a complete plan, right? Basically, instead of having 10 people work from remote, now you have the entire company working remote, right? So there were scalability issues that the companies have to deal with. They had the basic infrastructure in place, so things were reasonably okay. But there are other challenges that are coming up from the customer angle too, right? If you take from a customer, the contracts that they have signed up with the customers in terms of what they can do and what they cannot do cannot be necessarily followed, right? There's one thing that you want to do for 10 days versus one thing that you wanted to do forever, right? There are a lot of challenges in that space. Then you get the second class of folks where I would call it as an intermediate swimmer, where they probably know something, they know the techniques of it, but they never swam. They were actually pushed into the water. And a lot of sectors are like this, take healthcare. They probably have some systems to run the hospitals and stuff like that. When this happened, many dispensaries, clinics, and hospitals started providing video consulting. And to me, that's like a flotation device, right? They got something from somewhere and they said, okay, let me make my doctors available remotely so that they can actually do something. And in a normal world, the digital health, e-health was happening, but not at the pace. And this made the whole mindset change, right? As a patient, I would love to do a video consulting now compared to going and seeing a doctor. And that was not the case before. And if you take the third segment, where I would even call them as a novice swimmer, where they are probably heard about digitization, they think they need to do something, but the problem is they don't know what to do. And the example I would say is, there was a retail, I think clothes store in Chennai, where they actually told their customers, hey, no one is coming here, so you can call us video in a WhatsApp video, and we will take you around, and you choose the sari, and then we send it to your house. So people are coming up with innovative ways to sort of get into this digital world. So there is a digital divide in terms of how people are prepared for it, but the reality is, this is not the end. This is the beginning of many things to happen. And one of the things I would certainly look at, and I think I will point to what Jaspreet and Kuppulakshmi mentioned about how things are changing. And one big thing that is happening that we are noticing from a Cisco, and as you know, Cisco has been a leader in switching, routing, and security, and also the collaboration products. So what we are seeing is decentralization of network, right? Previously, most of the traffic used to come to the data centers, and then from there it goes to some cloud here and there. So there is a significant evolution going on in the cloud and network space. So three things if I have to highlight. One, the decentralization of networks, which means I do not need to connect to the VPN cluster or to a data center for me to access things, because most of the companies are using cloud solutions. They do not need to come to the data center and then do a single threading of the traffic. So how do we make sure that we are able to provide this in a much simpler and easier manner? And then the second thing is the applications and data that are available, most of them are going to cloud. And, it's a no-brainer. I think 93% of the people who went to cloud said, it is effective, it is working for them. And this is a faster way to get things done. So no one is looking at building their own stuff. Think of the analogy, right? If I don't know swimming, I'm not going to wait for building my own floater. I'm just going to buy something there and move on, right? So the reality is people are moving more aggressively towards cloud, and it has proven. And I think, the best use of things happen when, these kind of calamities work, right? So we are seeing a significant value add that is coming out from the cloud. And then the third thing, which is extremely important, and people have to realize, security is not an afterthought. Security has to be part of what we are doing. And if you see what is happening in the world, security and networking is coming together. And we used to think of data center and what you have in the corporate network as a perimeter. The biggest thing that is happening is there is an evolution going on in the industry which says identity is the new perimeter. We really don't know where you are coming from, how you are coming from, but we know who you are and what you are authorized to do, right? And there are policies which have to evolve, because sometimes policies are not the first one to come forward, right? The technology evolution, the policies are sometimes, coming behind. And a lot of times, the challenge that we have, and I think Kuppulakshmi was alluding to the fact that doing the right thing. But in many cases, we struggle to understand what is right, because it's the definition of, in many cases, it's the legality of the stuff which says it is right. But in reality, there is a very thin line. If I use it for my analysis versus someone sees that, how does it differ, right? If I use it for, certain purpose and then it somehow gets leveraged, like I think the whole challenge is going on with the social media, right? It's good to know what people are thinking, but if I'm able to make people think differently because of how I influence them, that's a completely different ballgame. And that's where a lot of regulators are struggling, not only to find out what is the right rule, right policy and regulation to put, but to even see how to even measure this, right? When you talk about a patent, it's extremely clear how to measure it. How do you know you have misused the patent? But in this case, how do you even look for a sign that, it is being used in the wrong way? So there are a lot of challenges going on with respect to, one, the readiness of how these industries are coming together. And there are a lot of things that technology is helping. At the same time, we also need to look at how to leverage the technology in the right way, and the process around how we are able to use it, right? I can't even imagine, right? A kindergartner sitting in front of a phone or a laptop or whatever it is to sort of learn ABCD, right? They have been playing around with iPads and devices to sort of learn some other things in a gaming way. But today, a class is happening that way, right? So the good part of it is technology is making everything accessible to people. But at the receiving end, how are you making it happen? Number two, how is this network traffic and all those things that are making all those things happen is being used in the right manner? And how do we make sure that we continue to use it for the right purposes and get the benefit rather than get beaten up by the disadvantages of some of those things?
Thank you, Giri. No, and I think all of us agree that, and Jaspreet talked about it, there's a new world coming in, and I don't think anybody, including the policymakers, were prepared for it, and I don't think they're prepared still. And I think that sort of brings me good. So on one side, you have the sector per se to decide what is right, and that right needs to be defined in a particular manner, keeping in what the future holds. But I want to come to you, Neelima, in terms of from a policy side, therefore, keeping in mind all the unknowns which exist. How do you see the policymakers can play a role? And I'm also just conscious of the time, guys. I think it was just such an interesting conversation. I never realized that I've gone past what should have been a little early. But so if I could just sort of look at a little bit more, crisper answers. So how do you see the policy could play a role in one, ensuring that there is a privacy and security aspect is taken care of, as well as the aspect of democratization of the technology from an access part, including that the divide is not there. I know all of us are not really the policy experts, so keeping that in mind, but still, as people who are part of the sector, how do you see this possibly could be taken care? So Neelima, if I can start with you.
So if you look at the policy part, and we talked about privacy, data protection. So we all know that personal data protection bill is with the JPC, which is a Joint Parliamentary Committee, and the depositions are going on. And then there are several clauses and there are several such things there in the report or in the draft which are concerning to the companies and industries. And people say that it is GDPR and plus plus. The good news for a company like us that yes, we are mostly compliant because we are GDPR compliant. So it's only the plus plus thing which we have to really look at that. So that's the privacy piece. Coming back to the work from home policy. And here I really wanted to first of all acknowledge before I talk about the policies and few of the recommendation in work from home or work from anywhere policy. So before I start there, I really wanted to acknowledge and thank Government of India, especially Department of Telecom, that has really made relaxations in work from home regulations, right? And which has really enabled ITES industry to cope well with this business challenges which COVID has thrown upon us, right? So initially it was relaxed till 31st of July, then Minister further expanded, and now it is up to 31st of December. So this is a big relief for ITES industry. And it is really critical now what we urge from government, that it is really critical to make these policy changes permanent. So instead of only having it up to 31st of December, if government makes it permanent, I think it is really going to have a multiplier effect. One, of course, the companies who are investing into work from home, because there are so many investments which are going on. It's not only you and I as a software industry, it is also those ITES. India is known to be hub for all the outsourced work, right? All the BPOs, all the call centers, right? So I think this is really going to help them in a big way. This is really going to enable that workforce. So that's first, of course, this work from home enablement. All these BPOs and call centers can work from home, and there are some good regulations around that. So there is a check and monitoring. It's not that it's just a free show for them and they can call anywhere, right? In addition to that, of course, as I mentioned, that this would also enable workforce for rural areas. So my co-panelist Jaspreet talked about decentralization, then even Giri talked about that how things are really getting decentralized. And that's what government is looking for. Whenever we have gone and met with Honorable IT Minister, he always talks about that now the expansion should take place in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Instead of only centralized in the metros, we should really expand our reach. We should set up our offices now in tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? So this would really help and expand the workforce from the rural areas, especially for women. So they can join the workforce. So that's another key thing. And the third thing which this policy would bring if it is relaxed, that it would really help these big cities which are decongested at this point of time. So, congested at this point of time to decongest, right? So these are few of the things which would really help. And then pollution, we all talk about pollution. So this would also further reduce the pollution, the traffic, and so many other things. So this is one piece. that expand the work from home policy, which is there till 31st of December, should be further expanded and rather should be made permanent. The second policy recommendation, which I would like to just put it across from this panel, is OSP regulation need to be totally recast to make it in line with the rest of the world. So there has to be uniformity, because now it's a global village. You are not only talking from one business to another in India. It's like it's going all over. And for example, the cloud technology can enable OSPs to start without huge infrastructure cost. So that kind of technology we are talking about, and globally it is being used. And this will also give flexibility in operations. So there is very little infrastructure cost, and then huge flexibility. And in fact, panelists talked about that cloud. Now you can work from anywhere and you don't have to create your own infrastructure. So exactly to that point. And this will also, in fact, in a big way, our BPO, Indian BPOs would become hugely competitive. So this was my second point. My third point was that we need to really promote this data center industry and create cloud economic zone for securing data, as well as improving trust and security. We have been talking about how to build trust and security. These are the two so critical areas, right? So security of cloud system. And for that, of course, cyber security standards are to be really laid out. We all know that government is working on it. Now the National Cyber Security Strategy is being framed, but that is really going to be another key milestone, I think, which government would, and we all would achieve if that is there in place. And in addition to that, it is also imperative to have law in place which would govern work from home scenario. So the way we have, in fact, law when we are working from office, there are several do's and don'ts. Similarly, we need to set out the nuances and policies perspective that may codify to recognize the new normal for service sectors and also for the support functions of manufacturing establishments. What we realize and what we feel that there should be a committee formed to recommend employment laws for, especially for knowledge industry, from various perspectives such as concept of working hours, employee-manager relationship, mental health. We all now in every TV channel, mental health is being discussed, and reassess workplace safety measures even while working from home or working from anywhere. I think these regulations and these laws need to be placed, because now we are slowly moving, as my other co-panelists also talked about, that from WFO to now it's WFH and now WFA. So I think these regulations need to be in place. And last, which I wanted to mention, which is the incentivization. I think incentivization of software products and enable remote working like video conferencing, on which we are talking right now, multi-user collaborative office software, cyber security softwares, cloud services. I think this should be incentivized. There should be tax rebate, because now these are no more just the services. These are now the critical infrastructure. The entire country is running on it, and we all are speaking virtually, working virtually. Everything has gone virtual. So I think these services should be incentivized and should be considered as a critical infrastructure. So these were my key points, which I just wanted to bring and share with you all on the policy.
Thanks a lot, Neelima. And I think, I learned a lot from all this stuff, because, while I've been in the policy and advocacy space, as you know, I've been working in other sectors and started to now build in the technology. But I think especially the fact that how it could really help from a democratization, from the women's safety, really having a rules and laws which should be now relevant from the new normal. But I want to sort of bring in other panelists, Giri or Kuppulakshmi or Jaspreet, if you have any kind of a point of view, because Neelima has, put in a plethora of thought process here for policymakers to consider. But if you guys have any thoughts, and again, I said, I'll just take like a 1 minute each from each of you, and then I'm going to go to the questions. So Giri, maybe I start with you, then Kuppulakshmi, and then Jaspreet, I'll end with you.
Sure. One thing is, most of the policies that we're talking about are very, very, very old. right? They have been written a couple of years back. So number one, there are going to be changes that are going to come in, and it is not going to stop there. There are going to be more and more changes that are coming from a regulation perspective. Number two, I think the reality of the situation here is companies like us, of course, we all want to be 100% adherent to all these policies. But I think most of the cases, in fact, I really would echo the point that Neelima mentioned. I think when when COVID hit, the government of India actually worked with all the technology leaders to sort of figure out what is the right thing to do. And they came up with a workaround, whether you have a static IP or whatever it is. I think they were able to listen to the industry and take the feedback and make the corrective stuff, even if it is a temporary at this point. And they are working towards what would be the stack, what would be the architecture that we should recommend to the entire industry, right? I think that is something that is extremely important. Working on a public-private partnership and ensuring that the leaders are providing the input so that we don't come up with a law which is not realistic or which will potentially pull us back. I think that is the second point, which I think will have a huge impact as we start taking the leadership and making things work for all of us.
Thank you, Giri. Kuppulakshmi, any thoughts from your side?
I do not want to repeat anything. I think we've covered almost everything. I particularly liked Giri's point on how for the last time we spoke about data, how do you know what is the right or the ethical thing to do? So I'm already going into thinking about that, where the future looks like one side you have people for the first time entering into technology space and from consuming it. The other side you have the millennials who are already outwitting us on how they look at information and how they process everything. Everyone needs customization and personalization of stuff. When you should not be looking at the pattern in which they're consuming tech, or you should not be looking at any data. How am I going to give this personalized experience? The example he gave on how people use WhatsApp now to show shopping experience. I think now industry should look to that future where all of us are in this blindfolded space. Somewhere you have to use the shared strength either to educate the policy writers from the government of India. And now that more and more apps are being banned, what do we do with all this talent that usually flies out of India? How do you retain them and use it for some of our own good? The future looks very interesting and very promising for those who like such adversities. And we shouldn't forget the human element. Who are we doing this for? And how India is a diverse space with different mindset and culture and background. I think we have to have more and more people leaders in the front leading this new policies that should be rewritten. That would not be the same, for everyone. It's not one blanket for everyone. From blue collar to white collar to different kinds of people, how do you take it forward and educate them? So a lot is going to depend upon how we do not want to accelerate and find ourselves alone in this winning space, but then at least now to really slow down and steady up and come together wherever we can work together if that's possible. It's a combination of so many things. I'm going back with a lot of notes to think about.
Thanks a lot, Kuppulakshmi. So Jaspreet, with you, we'll end, and then I'm going to come back with a couple of questions which has come our way, and then I'm going to put that to the panel.
Thanks, Aman. So let me stir the pot a little bit, knowing that I am not affiliated with any large company or entity today, though I did spend many years with one of the companies represented on the panel. Look, let us not forget that the tech industry in India became what it became because the government did not interfere. Okay, for many reasons, and there are times that happened because they could not understand what we were all doing. It was very new, right? I think, therefore, if I may say so, there's a balance to be drawn here about what kind of places one goes to the government for policies and where one does not and manages and innovates on one's own. I think in very short, if I was to put it in one sentence, in matters of security and privacy, let us go work with the government and make and some level of digital divide access. Okay, let us make stuff happen. Use government powers. Discuss and rethink policy with them, etc. On the other hand, let us leave innovation alone, because many times then these kind of go into the areas of innovation, the whole blockchain, Bitcoin part, for example. Okay, and then we kind of cry and say that, look, there's too much policy and too much interference. And so it's a double-edged sword, and let innovation be handled by the industry. Only specific areas of privacy, security, and universal access, in my view, is where we should be working on policy. So that's my little contrarian view here. But with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Jaspreet. And I do agree with you that the government needs to be just kind of a facilitator where they need to be. They are not required everywhere, and especially in a sectors like technology, which I don't think they understand very well. So there has to be a very different way, and it has to be more collaborative approach between industry, which brings in maybe a subject matter expertise, and the government, which needs to just look into the the interest of certain set of publics to ensure that things are more cohesive and together. With that, let's just come to the questions which we have. I think the first one is, and any of you could answer this one, a question on work from anywhere, as mentioned by panelists. Have any of you set up employee policies on work from anywhere, which will entail more flexibility in staffing, shifts, and change the way work is being done in tech firms like Cisco and Microsoft? So that's the first question. So any of you could answer that particular question right now. Who wants to take it?
So, so let me share my comments, right? I think from a Cisco's perspective, we have been doing work from home for a long time, being a network company. And we also have we have been one of the pioneers for the bring your own device scenario, right? You can buy a device in the market. Within 5 minutes, you can access Cisco's data with the appropriate security and credentials and stuff like that, right? So given that, we do have some explicit policies about working remotely. So I'm going to position as working remotely, and there are some things that happen when you are working remotely for some time versus for a long time. So there are explicit policies in terms of what you would do if you were to have your job completely remotely, right? You can work 365 days in a year from wherever you want. There are, of course, the reality challenges, not from a technology, but there are regulations. Like, for example, if you are in a certain tax regime, and then you are working from some other place, like, you are in a US payroll and working from India, right? There are other complications that may arise, but from a technology, what it can do, it enables everyone to work remotely, whether it is for 1 hour or 100 hours. And it also provides guidelines in terms of what all you should do, because some of the challenges I think Neelima was alluding to is when we start working from home, when the line between or a divide between going to office and the home is not there, then we land up, and again, we are humans, right? We land up, finding it difficult to draw that specific line, because a lot of times people use the traffic time or a travel time to sort of switch off between office and work and office. Now those things are not there. So there are other challenges associated with it, but broadly, there are guidelines with respect to what each of these, different methods of work will entice. And technology is pretty much same for everything, right? And we also have enabled, like, for example, at home, because of the nature of my job, I already have a small unit of Cisco, which is a collaboration unit, and I get exactly the same experience as I would get in my office, right? I have the same Wi-Fi SSID that I get in my office. I don't need to do anything different that I would do at office. So if you are a tele worker, then you can make things more easier. You can make the experience better. There are certain guidelines that help you do your job more effectively, but there are non-technology related things that the companies have to deal with as well.
Thanks, Giri. I think that there's next question which I'm going to club with. There are two questions which I think I can possibly club. So the question is largely that there are, companies or the clients who have kind of a still stringent getting back to the work. So they're still sort of thinking on a physical space, and they are asking for meetings. As well as the concept that people who are working from home, there is the divide between personal life and professional life is getting merged. So how do we think these people could be educated? Because as we all agreed, it's the new normal will be work from anywhere. But how do you get companies to understand that this is happening? And is there something which could be done to educate and sensitize about the challenges of or the new normal for work from anywhere, as well as the fact that there has to be a balance between professional and the personal life?
So if you look at, I would just pick up, and maybe after that, my co-panelist can answer on that. So if you look at, the line has really blurred between professional and personal life. We all know that now it's 24/7, right? But also at the same time, yes, we need to sensitize organizations who do not understand and who still insist at this point of time for the physical attendance and physical meeting. Because of course the safety comes first, and we all need to keep that mind, that it's not only us, but it's about the entire family. We all have our parents at home, small children at home. So keeping those things in mind, I believe we need to sensitize those companies who are really insisting upon employee to physically be present or physically go and meet. Like in Microsoft, in fact, it is all work from home or work from anywhere. So it's a pretty flexible system. Rather, sometimes when we want to go and meet in person with government, rather there is now a provision that we need to first of all take permission from our CEO. So that kind of safety, and they really ensure that we are safe and everything is taken care of. So I think such good HR practices, and there are those best practices available. I think the other companies should really look at that and try to really incorporate few of them, because safety comes first, security comes first for our employees. Yeah.
Thanks, Neelima. I think last question, and then I'm going to pass it on to Anubhuti.
Aman,
Go ahead, Giri.
Mine. I would like to,
Go ahead, Giri.
Yeah, I think I would certainly consider us in the technology sector to be very, very lucky. And, there are some sectors, where they cannot even afford to work from home. Like, take the courier, take the security guys, gardeners, right? See, the unfortunate reality is, of course, we can have a robo go and deliver the package, but we are not there yet, right? There are some places where technology hasn't come. But I think that is where, I'm certainly expecting a lot of innovation to happen, where, to the point that, you have a digital divide in a certain aspect, but here you are sort of not technology is not there in certain domains where it can actually accelerate this stuff, right? I mean, they are stuck. I mean, for your courier guy to come, there's no other option. They have to go physically to the office, go pick up the stuff, go and deliver in different places. I think, I think the philosophy here is two, right? One, sectors where you are lucky enough that you can work from home, then, how do you manage it? Of course, employee safety comes first. But there are sectors where you do not have an option, and, technology doesn't exist in a mature form that you can actually even encourage that. And I think that's where a lot of SMB, the small and medium businesses, they're struggling because, and these are the ones, where they don't know how to jump into the water, right? I mean, they're trying to figure out what will work for them. Hopefully, if this were to continue, they are going to find ways to make things happen for them. So I just want to put my 2 cents.
Thanks, Giri, and I think that's quite useful. So the last question, and again, anybody can answer, is largely about the fact that with the technology innovation happening, and we're going to see a huge innovations happening, is there going to be a collaboration between the different technology firms? So will the technology firms come together also because they need to put something out? So if I can have a question, so will we have like a Microsoft and, collaborating with another technology firm because it brings what it is expertise is and sort of doing into something, or similarly with Cisco or with, Zoho. So if we can just have an answer to that, and then I need to pass it on to Anubhuti.
I'll quickly answer that, Aman. In terms of technical ways, we're already working with our own competitors. We have collaborations with Microsoft. We do have collaborations or plugins, as you call it, with right from Outlook for those people who don't want to exit out of those systems. We have deep integrations with Gmail and G Suite. So it is already happening, you know. Now looking at the patterns, now more and more we have such collaborations happening, and we recently reached 1,000 milestone, I can call it, in the marketplace. So if you look for Zoho marketplace, you do see all of some of these solutions where you will have to scratch your head and say, okay, how are these two competitors coming together and working? You know, I was just speaking to a colleague who said we did a co-marketing campaign with MailChimp, and that's one of our, you know, products and competitors in that space. So that's happening. Now we will leverage more on that. Of course, deep integrations happening already.
Thanks, Kuppulakshmi. With that, I think we are coming to the end. I know it took a little extra time, but I think we are pretty much there. But thanks a lot, everyone. And as we can see, the collaboration is happening in here. So we have Cisco and a Microsoft and a Zoho speak on a Zoom platform. So I think it's a world where technology will play the critical role, and everybody will need to sort of be used to that. Thank you guys for your time. Thanks a lot for this exciting panel, and thanks a lot attendees for being part of it. And we'll keep in touch in the coming weeks as we sort of move forward on this policy dialogue. Thanks
Aman,
a lot
you're
again.
a wonderful moderator. Thank you so much for making this happen.
Thank you, Kuppulakshmi. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Enjoy your Friday.